Lesson 6 in our series on best-selling author Michael Singer's book, Living Untethered, coming up right after this. Hey everyone, I'm Yoel and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So grateful to have you. And in today's video, I'm going to carry on with our series on best-selling author Michael Singer's book, Living Untethered. And this part of the book is entitled The Human Predicament and Beyond. And if you've missed my previous videos and you happen to arrive on this video in YouTube, then please go back and check out my video library. I've got the videos starting from part 1, obviously, or by this time, maybe the introduction. I'm doing that last. But in any case, you can start from the introduction or from part 1, depending on when you're watching this, and work your way through that way. I've also recommended in the past videos to actually purchase the book. I've linked to the Amazon link in my description below. And as always, if you have any questions, try and put that on the blackboard, so to speak. You can always send me questions or comments in the comment section. I'll do my best to address those. But in order to get what you can from the video, it's best to, jot down those questions and return to it afterwards and try and absorb whatever you can from the videos. Okay, so without further, one more thing before I say without further ado, as usual, I will be looking down from time to time. I've got my trusty notebook, so forgive me. That's the only reason I'll be looking down from the camera. Okay, so let's jump right in. And the first chapter within this section is called The Human Predicament. And Singer starts out by saying that the most meaningful questions regarding quality of life are not about your job or your possessions or your relationships, etc., but rather how you're doing inside of you. It's hard to be okay inside. This is the human predicament, Singer says, and we're going to expound on that, obviously. We've discussed why it's so hard. We have emotions. Emotions create thoughts. And then we store these emotions combined with thoughts as samskaras, as blocked energy patterns within us. That's part of resistance or clinging, as we've talked about many times in the past videos. And that forms a part of our psyche. And then we have the self-concept. We have our preferences, our likes and dislikes. And then things that come in from the outside world have to match those preferences, because if they don't, then we have resistance. Or if they do, but we're too strongly attached to them, we cling. Okay, so essentially, if something matches our samskaras, we're happy, and if something doesn't, we're not. And all too often, as we all know, things don't match our samskaras. Things don't happen exactly as we want them to be. So essentially, Singer says that everything that's going on in your personal mind is a result of either trying to make everything that comes in match with your stored patterns so that you'll feel better, or avoid patterns that will make you feel worse. Okay. So the patterns are running your life. You're reactive. You're serving your blockages, essentially. An example is worry, right? You worry because you won't get what you think you need, or you worry that something's going to happen that you don't want. The energy starts swirling around, and then it reinforces your preferences and keeps those blockages stored within you. You keep pushing them back down and back down and back down. He takes another example. Let's say you're lonely. So you look for something to compensate that loneliness. Let's say you think like, oh, if I find this person in this relationship, this is going to solve my loneliness. Or I'm just going to escape into, movies or television, or I'm going to jump out of airplanes. I need that adrenaline rush, whatever example you can think of to try and get away from that loneliness. Now, that's not dealing with the root cause. Okay, so for example, to take this even further, and Singer has wonderful metaphors that he uses all the time to really underscore his points. Let's say you have a stomach ache, and you take Pepto-Bismol for that. The Pepto-Bismol is not dealing with the root cause of the stomach ache. It's a temporary solution that can help you feel better, but ultimately the stomach ache and what's caused it is still there. Or you have a headache, for example, so you take an Advil, okay? The underlying cause of the headache, maybe it's sleep deprivation, maybe you're not drinking enough water, whatever the case may be, but taking an Advil is not dealing with the root cause. That's still there. So the solution, you can't say the solution to not having stomach aches is to take Pepto-Bismol. Similarly, with the inner work, the solution is doing the inner work to release the blockages, to allow that constant flow of energy, as we talked about in the last video. Think of the T-pipe example, where energy is meant to continue to flow up and not be blocked. Keep working on that. Keep working on freeing up those blockages so that the energy inside of you can keep flowing up and you can keep feeling that love. This doesn't mean that you don't interact with the world, Singer reminds us. It just means that you use the outside, it just means that you're not using the outside world to try and work with the blockages that you have. You're not trying to use the outside world to match your patterns. You're experiencing the outside world. We'll get more into that as we go on. So again, to use the example, we use the example of the stomach ache. Singer says, if your stomach is hurting and you're eating things that are keeping you unhealthy, and somebody says to you, well, I've got food that's going to make you better, first you've got to stop eating the bad food. Okay, you've got to stop eating that food that's making you sick. Okay, so same thing over here. You've got to stop doing the things that you've done before that have been causing you those inner disturbances. And he continues with all sorts of examples, and these examples are a great way of understanding things and also putting things in a kind of almost ludicrous light to help you understand just how crazy it is, well, you know, what we do. And that's not being judgmental or critical. That's how we're all kind of wired in this human predicament. That's why he calls it the human predicament. So we talked about the ink blot test where somebody holds up an ink blot, and that gives you all sorts of different understandings of what it means. Everybody has their own experiences of what that ink blot represents. So if somebody was to hold up that piece of paper with the ink blot and you didn't like it, it made you angry, it reminded you of something infuriating, is the solution to not hold up that paper? Is that the problem? No. The issue is there's something inside of you that was stored, and that's causing you to feel anger. It's not the person holding up the paper that's causing the problem. It's not the outside world that's causing the problems. It's your reactions to it. So rather than dealing with the solution, everybody's doing the opposite. Everybody's trying to get rid of that ink blot paper rather than actually looking inwardly to see where they can work on the solutions to release those blockages. And that's what we're going to continue to get into as Singer continues to describe this human predicament. That's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is called the paradigm shift. So let's say I was to ask you, ask yourself now as you're watching this video, what would make you happy? Okay, think of something, make a list. What would make you happy? You could even pause this video if you want. Now, some of you may say, oh, if I was in a relationship, or if I got that car I've always wanted to get, if I had a new house, a new job, new career, whatever the case may be. But then Singer says, well, let's think about that more. Let's say you got that house, okay? You move into the house, but then you realize there's a leaky roof and it's causing you endless problems and you're spending tons of money. You thought you would never have to pay rent again if you were renting a place, and then you bought a house, but now you're spending more money than you ever imagined because it's all sorts of problems. So was the house the solution? Or you're in a relationship, woman's great, you're having a great time, and then it stops being great. She starts acting in a way that you never thought she would act in, and you're fighting all the time, and you're just feeling miserable. So was that relationship the solution? No, of course not. These are things that you wanted because you thought it would bring you that inner happiness and that joy. So then why not just ask for that joy to begin with? Why not say, I want to have inner happiness and joy? But we don't do that. Again, the human predicament is that we look to the outside external factors and think that that's what's going to bring the joy and happiness. But as we've seen now from Singer's example, that's really not the case. And it just doesn't work, Singer says. So we're looking to the outside world or outside externalities to give us that happiness, but it doesn't work. It's a bottomless pit. Only if something comes up from within can it be unconditional. As we talked about, that energy, that Shakti that's constantly flowing up. Only if you're constantly regenerating that from within can that be unconditional. Otherwise, anything that you tie to an external source is always going to be conditional and it won't last. And that's why relationships are so complicated, Singer says, because we all have our stored patterns, the samskaras, as we've talked about, and they form all sorts of blockages, and we have preferences of what we need from the outside world to come in and has to match those patterns. And then you add to that complexity with another person who has his or her own stored patterns and blockages and samskaras, and then you're trying to match samskaras with one another. Just think about how complicated that is. So how do you get to those states of unconditional love that we talked about, to that free flow of energy? You start letting go of those blockages. You start releasing them. Essentially, you have two choices, Singer says. You can either devote your life to getting the world to match your preferences, which we know doesn't work, or you can devote your life to letting go of your samskaras. Letting go of yourself instead of serving yourself is the real paradigm shift. And I'll say that one more time. It's such a beautiful line. Letting go of yourself instead of serving yourself is the real paradigm shift. And that concludes that chapter on the paradigm shift. And continuing on, Singer brings us to the next chapter, which he calls Working with the Heart. So as we've discussed, your heart experiences a myriad of emotions and feelings based on all the samskaras that you've accumulated. And I say you, I obviously am referring to myself as well, as I'm always reminding you in these videos. I'm not talking down or lecturing. I'm right there along with all of you. I'm sharing this together. These are Singer's teachings, not mine. I'm just presenting it as best as I can. So your inability to handle all these things are what keep you locked in the human predicament. You're trying to control that outside world to be okay. But the only way to actually be okay is to continue to clear out those blockages that are within you, not try and change the outside world or get it to match your stored patterns and samskaras. So how do you do that? Well, it starts, first of all, with being grateful for your heart. Don't fight the fact that you have a heart. It's not a punishment to have a heart, Singer says. Think about it. When you have a movie that doesn't have a musical score, it's not the same. It's missing that emotional component. It's dead. There's no aliveness. Okay, the same thing with our heart. If we didn't have a heart that allowed us to have these feelings and emotions, we'd virtually be dead. Maybe not literally, but we wouldn't be feeling anything. Think about life without feelings. Wouldn't be very nice, would it? So be grateful that you have a heart. It's a beautiful thing to have these feelings and emotions. Just because it's complicated, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be grateful that we have it. And as Singer will teach, there's ways to learn how to deal with that. Your heart can bring you to heights of ecstasy, Singer says, but also to the depths of despair. It can do it in a matter of moments without you doing anything. It's really remarkable when you think about it, Singer says. But what happens is, because this can be so overwhelming, okay, think about the latter part of what I said, those depths of despair and despondency and sadness and anger and jealousy. We don't want to deal with that. It's too painful. So we try and block it out and suppress it or deny it. And all that does is end up stunting us spiritually, because again, we're storing it as blockages and samskaras. Singer keeps emphasizing this point because it's so crucial to understand just how and why that happens. But as you expand yourself and you continue to grow spiritually, which you will, the fact that you're watching this video already means that you have that desire to grow spiritually, and kudos to you. So as you continue to do that, your range of comfort with the world will continue to grow wider and wider. And you will be able to handle more and more of moments passing in front of you. And I can speak from personal experience, not as a guru and far from perfection, but certainly progress, that more and more I'm able to handle certain things that in the past I would have never been able to handle because of Singer's teachings. Okay, I have the benefit of having read his book many, many, many times. Okay, so as you continue to practice this, you will see, I guarantee it, if you do it, you will see that you will expand more and more and be able to handle things you never thought you'd be able to handle in the past. So for example, let's say in the beginning, when you have a feeling of jealousy, the best you may be able to do is to learn not to act on that jealousy. Okay, so you may still want to suppress it and maybe pretend like it's not there or do something to distract yourself. But if you're not acting on that jealousy and making disastrous decisions, as we've talked about in the past, when you make decisions arising out of some samskaras, it can have disastrous results. The next thing you know, you're leaving your spouse, for example, as we talked about in the last video. Okay, so you can congratulate yourself if you're at a level where you've been able to get to a place where you're not acting on a samskara. That's great, but that's not the ultimate. The ultimate is learning to accept those emotions as they come in as a reality of life, and then learning to let go of them. This is what the masters do. It's not that the masters don't have emotions, they do. They're just at peace with them, Singer says. Okay, because if you're not, let's take another example to use the other side of not being at peace with emotions. Let's say somebody did something that made you feel really fearful. Okay, and then you start suppressing it. You don't want to deal with that. And then later on, you learn that something terrible happened to that person. So, and then you have this feeling of, wow, what a relief. Now your emotions, that's something that's coming out of your samskara, because you didn't allow the experience of feeling fearful when somebody had said something earlier to pass through you. Okay, because if you did, this new event, this new moment of something terrible happening to somebody, you'd actually feel that pain of something terrible happening to a person. Nobody wants something terrible to happen. But instead, because you had blocked that within yourself, and then this terrible thing happens, you feel relief. Your emotions are not congruent with reality. But spirituality, conversely, is recognizing that you have that fear that comes in and then letting it pass through you, as we've talked about. And don't worry if you're thinking like, well, how does that work? We're going to get into that, and Michael Singer has techniques to help you develop that. Not in this video, but in a future video. You recognize that experiences are just forms of consciousness. Okay, rather than resisting them, you learn to experience them. Let them in, allow them to fully be in and experience them. And Singer says, as impossible as this may sound, we actually do that. Think about an example where you've watched a movie that was really sad, but you loved it. It touched you deeply. You enjoyed the sadness. Okay, we have that ability to enjoy experiences regardless of what those experiences actually are. But for some reason, not for some reason, because of some scars and you know, our conditioning and our experiences, we'll block that energy and kind of resist it when it's real life. But in the movies, we know we have that ability to do it. Okay, but in real life, so to speak, we actually have the ability to do it as well. We can enjoy any and all experiences. It just takes that sort of practice, that paradigm shift. Learning to make peace with your heart is a major step towards extracting yourself from the human predicament that we find ourselves in. I'm going to say that again. Learning to make peace with your heart is a major step towards extracting yourself from the human predicament that we find ourselves in. And as we continue along with Michael Singer's book and these videos, we're going to learn just how to do that. And finally, we get to the last chapter in this section called Neither Suppression Nor Expression. So Singer says there's a sacred place between suppression and expression, and that's pure experience. Okay, we ended off the last chapter talking about that idea of experiencing things, not suppressing them, okay, not expressing them, not acting on them, experiencing them. The sorrow of death or the joy of birth are coming up, and you're experiencing both. There's nothing you need to do about it. The mind is free to think, the heart is free to heal. But you fight it. Your mind starts fighting back. And that's because the mind has its habitual patterns that it formed through its experiences. And those experiences stored as blockages, as we've talked about over and over again. Those are samskaras. And the only data the mind currently has is experience. And that, because of those experiences, the mind thinks it's right. That's part of the human predicament too. But while the mind knows what it experienced, it doesn't know what it didn't experience. The data is limited. That's why the wise sage, Lao Tzu, Singer says, the wise person does not argue. What for? He has his data, she has hers. Your mind will invariably start talking about its likes and dislikes, but don't listen to it. Let go of it, surrender it. It's just part of your personal blockages superimposed on reality. I'll say that line again because it's beautiful. It's just part of your personal blockages superimposed on reality. The data that the mind has is nothing compared to the data of the universe. Think about one of the earlier videos where we talked about the outside world and the billions of years and what it took to get to this one moment in time. Think of all the data that goes into it. What data does our mind have? It's statistically insignificant, Singer says. And by the way, that's why the mind changes itself so many times. Give it one more experience and the mind will change its mind. Give it another and it will change its mind again. The mind is fickle like that, based on data that comes in from moment to moment. The personal mind is not going to solve your problems. It does its thing because of its data, but again, its data is so limited. And with the heart, the wise person allows it to do its thing as well. No suppression nor expression, just experience. Just allow that free form of energy to pass through you, as we've discussed. You are free to have beautiful moments. Rather than think about what may go wrong, what might not go wrong, what you want to happen, what you don't want to happen, just observe it, notice it, experience it, let it flow. To learn to do this, it requires a change in attitude, Singer says. You begin to accept what occurs in your heart. Honor what's there, sit back and relax, release it. Appreciate that your heart is working to clear out your samskaras, those blocked and stored patterns within you. It's releasing that energy. The reward for this is freedom, constant inspiration, love. What you've been doing in the past hasn't worked. It's been all pain and no gain. So why not change that attitude and try something different? To quote Rumi, Michael Singer quotes Rumi, who was an early poet. This is so beautiful. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. One more time. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. And that's a beautiful ending to this section. We are going to continue on with various practices we can do to start working with our hearts, to learn how to experience rather to suppress or express. And that will lead us to that path of self-realization and greater inspiration and love and joy and energy. Sounds like unsustainable promises, but Singer promises that they are sustainable. And again, I myself, and I say this very humbly, have had moments of these experiences and continue to have them because we do expand and grow spiritually. So have faith, hold the course, and stay with this course, because we will continue to talk about it in the next video. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd be grateful if you hit that thumb up to like the video and subscribe to the channel, which definitely helps me and also helps you not miss a future video. Go back and watch the other videos in this series if you haven't. I've got other videos on all sorts of topics. There's also arts and entertainment. So it's not just the heavy consciousness stuff, although I say heavy, but I love it. That's why I do it. But there's other more lighter types of topics as well. I've got a series on a new podcast on Curb Your Enthusiasm that you may find joyful, and check out what's there on in my library. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, so once again, thank you for visiting. Any comments or questions, leave it in this comment section below. I'll do my best to address it. I'm so grateful that you watched this video, and until next time, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that video. I've got plenty more in my videos library. If there's a topic you'd like me to discuss, feel free to leave that in the comments and I'll do my best to address it. If you can like the video, I'd be very grateful. As well, if you subscribed, you'd be helping me out. You'd also be helping yourself out to not miss a future video. Thanks so much. Have a great day.